especially with Ozzy, especially with certain guys in rock, where you go, you know, it certainly hasn't been well for a while.
No.
But I mean, what a shock to the system. And at the end of the show, I just said, everybody, let's say goodnight to Ozzy. And everybody just, Ozzy, Ozzy. So, I mean, he was a very beloved character in rock.
On July 22nd, 2025, the music world lost a legend. Ozzy Osbourne, known as the Prince of Darkness, passed away after a long battle with illness. For his fans, Ozzy's death wasn't just the loss of a great rock star, but the end of an era. In the hours following the announcement of Ozzy's passing, the entire music community seemed paralyzed by shock. However, alongside the condolences from fans, there was one special friend, Alice Cooper, who had stood by Ozzy for decades. But unlike the pained expressions of those around him, Alice appeared eerily calm, as if he had predicted Ozzy's departure. Alice, the steadfast companion who never left Ozzy's side, remained so silent that it was almost impossible to understand. Was this overwhelming pain that he couldn't express, or was it another way for him to cope with the loss of his closest friend? Part 1, Ozzy Osbourne's final moments. When mentioning Ozzy Osbourne, it's impossible not to acknowledge the marks he has left on music history. As the founder of Black Sabbath, Ozzy not only transformed the way people listen to rock, but also reshaped an entire music genre. His heavy, dark sounds and lyrics, filled with the power of defiance, turned Ozzy into a symbol of rock and roll and heavy metal. With songs like Iron Man, War Pigs, and Crazy Train, Ozzy became the voice of a generation, the legend of darkness, a musical warrior who constantly battled society himself and even death. His career was not just a series of successes, but a symbol of resilience and overcoming adversity. With his distinctive voice, Ozzy brought powerful, energetic anthems to fans, becoming an irreplaceable part of millions' musical journey. Despite enduring painful years of addiction and illness, Ozzy never gave up. With his daring, adventurous rock star lifestyle, he proved that music is not just art, but a life and death struggle. These hardships forged a man who was not only strong in music, but great in spirit. As death neared, all signs were clear on Ozzy Osbourne's body. Parkinson's disease tormented him, making every movement a struggle, and his hands no longer had the strength to grip the microphone as before. The pain relentlessly tortured him, making sleep impossible for many nights. Illness not only took his physical strength, but it also diminished his ability to do what he loved most: sing, perform, and live for music. Despite his frail body, the inner strength, Ozzy's innate resilience, never faded. In the summer of 2025, at the age of 77, when Ozzy's health was no longer sufficient for a long tour, he still decided to do what few in his condition would even consider: perform one final show. He not only wanted to sing, but to leave the stage as a legend. In fact, many had advised him to abandon this plan, as his weakened health made it impossible to prolong the performance. But Ozzy decided to defy all advice, to go against his own body. Music was the only reason he continued to live. The evening at Villa Park on June 6, 2025, would not be just an ordinary concert. The 40,000 people present at the stadium that night didn't just come to enjoy music, but to witness the final time a legend would step onto the stage. Ozzy, with a body no longer strong, still resolutely walked out under the dim stage lights. It was a moment when his music was celebrated not through a spectacular performance, but through poignant moments of respect and farewell. At that moment, Ozzy didn't need showy displays or dazzling lights. He only needed a moment to reflect on everything. Like all great artists, he understood that death is inevitable, but what Ozzy truly feared wasn't death, it was leaving without passing on the musical legacy he had built throughout his life. He couldn't leave a silent stage, he couldn't leave an unfinished legacy. The image of Ozzy on stage, though weak, still radiated an unwavering determination. His spirit had never weakened, and this was what made the crowd love him so much. In those moments, his body may have been frail, but his soul, his passion for music, and his deep connection with the fans were never broken. No one can deny the legacy that Ozzy Osbourne has left behind. He was the one who brought heavy music, darkness, and defiance into a universal language for those who felt abandoned. Though he could no longer stand on his feet like before, Ozzy still created an unforgettable night. For the 40,000 fans present at Villa Park, it was not just a farewell concert. It was a tribute ceremony for a legend, someone who dedicated his entire life to music, who lived by music, and would depart through music. In those final moments, nothing could stop Ozzy from standing before the thousands of people who loved him one last time. Part 2. Alice Cooper. Faces, Ozzy's passing. July 22nd, 2025, was a day Alice Cooper would never forget. The death of Ozzy Osbourne, one of Alice's closest friends and longtime colleagues, shook the entire music world. At that time, Alice was preparing to go on stage for a routine performance, unaware that shocking news would change everything. When the news of Ozzy's passing reached Alice, he was stunned. What he had just heard seemed impossible to be true. Alice had been in a good mood preparing for that evening's performance, but the shock and disbelief left him frozen for a moment, unable to speak. Although Alice knew Ozzy had been battling severe health issues for a long time, he still couldn't accept the passing of his warrior friend. Ozzy was not just a colleague. They had shared countless stages, faced challenges in the music industry, and endured dark times together. For Alice, Ozzy's death felt like losing a part of his own soul. Ozzy had lived a life full of challenges and strength, and his passing still left Alice in disbelief. However, Alice knew that no matter how immense the sorrow, he couldn't abandon his fans that night. After a few moments of deep reflection, Alice decided to take the stage as a true artist, someone who always felt a responsibility toward his work and the people who had come to see him perform. Despite the emotional turmoil, he didn't want the audience to feel his absence. The show went on as planned, but at the end of his performance, Alice didn't rush off stage. He stayed, raising his hands high, as if inviting everyone to join in a moment of tribute to Ozzy. Instead of finishing the show and hastily leaving, Alice took a brief but meaningful moment to honor Ozzy. It was a gesture of respect, a shared pain and mourning, not just from Alice, but from everyone who loved Ozzy. On stage, Alice didn't need to say much. He simply raised his hands in a quiet act of reverence for his fallen friend. At that moment, Alice wasn't a famous artist. He was a friend expressing sincere respect and sorrow. Then, something miraculous happened. The audience, thousands of people present that night, didn't chant according to script. They were no longer just spectators. They chanted Ozzy's name not at Alice's command, but because they truly felt the loss, because their emotions overwhelmed them. The cries of Ozzy Ozzy echoed with emotion and authenticity, not just as a farewell, but as a declaration that Ozzy Osbourne would never be forgotten. The relationship between Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne might not have been a traditional close friendship where they met every day or talked on the phone for hours, but that didn't mean their friendship lacked depth. They didn't share every mundane moment of life, but when they stood on stage together, they were warriors of music. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and a profound understanding of the challenges each had faced. During their years of touring together, they went through many hardships, not just in music, but in life itself. Alice and Ozzy fought against the demons of addiction, the harshness of the music industry, and the temptations that caused so many to falter. They were both strong artists, but also deeply vulnerable, which is why they understood each other better than anyone else. No one could understand the loneliness of a rock artist better than another rock artist, and Alice knew that. He and Ozzy shared moments of hardship and joy on stage, laughed together, cried together, and lived a life that only those who had walked the music path could truly understand. One of the most famous collaborations between Alice and Ozzy was the song Hey Stupid, a powerful track that showcased the rock and roll fusion between the two legendary artists. Surely, when they stood on stage together, nothing could separate them. It was the union of two people, two different musical styles, but with the same burning passion for music and their fanciness. They may not have been lifelong friends in the traditional family sense, but their bond through music made their friendship enduring and meaningful. The joint tours and the brief moments between performances were the golden moments where Alice and Ozzy could share their experiences. Though they didn't have the daily connection of close friends when they met on stage, it was a fusion of artistic souls who understood the brutal realities of life. This is why, when Ozzy passed, Alice not only lost a friend, but also lost a part of his musical soul, a companion who had been through the highs and lows of the music industry with him. And in that moment on stage, with thousands of fans, Alice didn't need to say another word. His tribute to Ozzy, coupled with the chants of Ozzy's name from the crowd, was proof that their connection was not just in music. It was a lasting friendship built not with words, but with a deep understanding and mutual respect for each other. Looking back, Alice couldn't help but feel stunned. He had witnessed Ozzy overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable, from battles with addiction to difficulties in the music industry. And yet, in the end, Ozzy succumbed to the ruthless power of illness. Alice had always believed that someone like Ozzy with such indomitable will and spirit would last forever, like an undying legend. But Ozzy's death made Alice realize something he didn't want to face: even legends must leave. This was the most painful and shocking feeling for Alice, because he had always viewed Ozzy as someone unbeatable, a star that would forever shine in the hearts of fans. What stunned Alice the most wasn't the suddenness of Ozzy's death, but the passing of someone too strong to stop. Alice had always seen Ozzy as a resilient warrior, someone who never gave up in the face of challenge. Everyone knew that Ozzy had lived a life full of turbulence, riding the heavy waves of career and life. His triumphs over addiction, his musical reinventions after each fall, these all proved that Ozzy was a symbol of fortitude, a true warrior. But now, with his passing, Alice felt like a part of the music world had been torn apart. Ozzy's departure wasn't just the end of a friend, but the end of an irreplaceable legend. Alice recalled the years they had fought together, the sleepless nights on tour, the late performances, the times they fought through the undertows of a harsh music industry. All of these moments built an irreplaceable bond between them. And now, with Ozzy gone, Alice felt like a part of himself had been lost. He had always believed that no matter what, Ozzy would never give up. He would always keep fighting, just as he had with every challenge in his life. But Ozzy's passing shattered all those beliefs. The relationship between Alice and Ozzy wasn't a traditional close friendship. They weren't the type to meet every day, talk every night, or share the simple moments of life. However, their connection lay in a very special place: musical friendship. Artists like Alice and Ozzy couldn't share their deepest thoughts with just anyone. Only colleagues in the industry, those who had weathered the storms of the music world with them, could truly understand the cruelty and isolation that only a rock artist could feel. Alice and Ozzy were warriors fighting together, and it was in those intense musical moments that they truly understood each other. The joint performances, the long tours, and the backstage conversations were where Alice and Ozzy shared everything. They didn't just talk about music. They talked about life's struggles, the pain and the mental ups and downs of being an artist. Alice understood that no matter how tough Ozzy appeared on the outside, he was still a man full of emotions, full of scars, just like every other artist. Ozzy's stories of battling his own demons, of the dark moments in his life, made Alice realize that they weren't just musical friends, they were battle-hardened comrades who had been through it all. Ozzy's death wasn't just the loss of a close friend. It was the loss of a music legend, a star who had illuminated the path for others. Alice couldn't help but feel an irreplaceable emptiness. Ozzy had been a part of music history, and his passing didn't just affect Alice personally, but the entire global music community. The loss Alice faced wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing a legend who had helped shape an entire music genre. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the creator of music, he was a living symbol of a generation. Every person in the rock community knew that without Ozzy, rock would be missing a part of its very soul. Without Ozzy, fans and artists like Alice didn't know where they would find a voice so powerful, a fire so unyielding. Alice understood that Ozzy was special not just because of his musical talent, but because of his courage, his fierce determination to live, no matter how harsh life became. Ozzy created songs not just for music's sake, but to say something deeper, to reach the hearts of the forgotten. That's why when Ozzy passed, Alice didn't just lose a musical friend, he lost a part of his own soul. And in that moment, even though his heart ached, Alice knew that Ozzy's music would live forever, just as Ozzy had lived. Part 3. The Final Bond, on July 28, 2025. When the light of a musical legend officially dimmed, Alice Cooper was present at the funeral of his dear friend, Ozzy Osbourne. Although Alice had prepared himself for this loss long before stepping into the church and seeing Ozzy's family, the ones who had shared so many ups and downs with him in life, still made him choke up. Alice was not just a musical friend, but also a lifelong companion to the Osbourne family, a witness to all the joys, sorrows, and challenges they had overcome together. During the memorial service, Alice couldn't help but reflect on the times he and Ozzy had shared on the stage, the moments of joy, or even the deep conversations about life. These were memories Alice cherished, But now as he looked at Ozzy's family, he understood that for Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy was not just a colleague, but a lifelong partner, the man who had shared everything in life with her. Alice knew this loss was profound, but he also understood that Sharon would always carry in her heart the image of her resilient husband, the one who had overcome all difficulties to stay by her side for so many years. Sharon, along with their children, Jack, Kelly, and Amy, stood there enduring the immense pain of losing the man who had been the pillar of strength for their family throughout his life. However, amidst the overwhelming sadness, Alice saw something he had hoped for. Ozzy's spirit had not left, even though his physical form had departed. Alice stood close to Sharon, gently placed his hand on her shoulder, and spoke words of sincere comfort. Ozzy will always live in our hearts, in every piece of music, in every moment we shared together. He left behind a great legacy, and that's how we continue living with him. Alice's words were not only a comfort, but also a reminder of the power of music, of Ozzy's resilience in life. Sharon, though still choking back tears, could feel that Alice had come, not just to bid Ozzy farewell, but to also support her and the family during their most difficult time. Alice knew that although Ozzy's life had come to an end, his music would continue to live on as a testament to the immortality of the rock spirit, the spirit of those who never give up. After the service, Alice didn't leave immediately. He stayed with Sharon and the children, sharing their grief, reminiscing about the happy and meaningful moments in Ozzy's life. Alice felt that for those closest to Ozzy, believing in the immortality of his music was what would help them navigate this storm. Though Ozzy was no longer with them, for Alice and the Osbourne family, music and love would always endure and would never fade away. Alice Cooper came to the funeral not only to say goodbye to Ozzy, but also to reaffirm that musical friendship is priceless and that Ozzy Osbourne's legacy will live on through his friends, family, and fans. Part 4. A legacy that will never fade. Although the loss of Ozzy left Alice Cooper deep in thought and at times unable to fully express his emotions, he knew that music was the only way to continue living with the legacy of his warrior friend. Alice, though, not one to display his emotions outwardly, continued to perform in the days following Ozzy's death as a tribute, as a way to honor Ozzy's musical legacy. But even while on stage, Alice couldn't stop feeling the deep emptiness in his soul. Ozzy had become an irreplaceable part of Alice's life, not just as a colleague, but as a musical warrior whom he always respected. Each song, each note Alice played, carried the echoes of Ozzy. Alice understood that even though Ozzy was no longer standing beside him on stage, the musical legacy of Ozzy and everything they had shared would live on. Ozzy's existence in music was not just a name, it was a soul that would never die, just as Alice always thought of his friend. Alice continued to mention Ozzy in interviews and performances. Every time he spoke Ozzy's name, his face would light up, as if reliving the moments they had shared together on stage. Ozzy is the only person I know who could turn pain into music, and that's what makes his music live forever. Alice shared during an interview, his words filled with deep respect and an unshakable belief in the friend he had lost. The friendship between Alice and Ozzy wasn't just a personal relationship, but also a bond in a world of music filled with hardships. Like musical warriors, they knew better than anyone the harsh realities of the path they had chosen. Every night of performance, Every tour they faced invisible pressures, from the competition in the industry to the psychological and physical crises. But between them, there was always an unspoken understanding that only those who had walked the same road could truly feel. Alice and Ozzy had once stood together on rock's biggest stages and shared the smaller battles backstage. They might not have talked much about their innermost feelings, but they understood the sacrifices each had made for the music and for their fans. Their relationship didn't require words because the respect and understanding between them were enough to express everything. As Alice shared, "We weren't the kind of friends who called each other every day, but we were warrior friends. We walked through the same battlefield, and that's something irreplaceable." It was this deep connection that helped them both overcome the major challenges in their musical careers. And even though Ozzy passed away, Alice knew that the connection between them would continue to live on through their music and through the indelible memories they had created. Artists like Alice and Ozzy, with their entire careers, do not just exist through their singing, but also through the harmony and deep empathy in their music. For Alice, the loss of Ozzy wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the loss of a part of his soul in his music. For artists like them, loss is part of life. But Ozzy's death left a void that was hard to fill. Alice, though, not one to easily express his emotions, always conveyed his respect and deep gratitude for the friend who had stood by him through so many trials whenever he mentioned Ozzy. As an artist, Alice not only had to live with the memories he shared with Ozzy, but also faced the loneliness of not being able to share long nights on tour or backstage conversations. Every time he stood on stage, Alice felt Ozzy's absence, the companion who had fought alongside him on every musical front. However, Alice understood that Ozzy's musical legacy would never fade. Because of this, even though this loss caused Alice great pain, it also pushed him to continue his own journey, to keep honoring his warrior friend, the legend, who had shaped a part of music history. Part 5. Alice Cooper carries on. The musical legacy since Ozzy's passing, Alice Cooper has continuously spoken about his late friend. Every time he steps on stage, Alice feels as if he is continuing the journey they both built together. In interviews, Alice often mentions Ozzy not only to honor a legend, but also to remind the world that Ozzy's music will live on, inspiring future generations. Alice isn't just a grieving friend. He's also the one who keeps the bright flame of music that Ozzy lit burning. Particularly the musical collaborations in the past between Alice and Ozzy, such as the song "Hey Stupid," have created a timeless musical model. Whenever Alice talks about Ozzy, he doesn't just recall the sweet memories, but also continues to carry forward the musical values Ozzy left behind. In performances after Ozzy's death, Alice always strives to revive his friend's music. He feels that if he does not continue preserving and promoting what Ozzy had done, it would be a betrayal to his great legacy. For Alice, Ozzy's musical legacy is not just part of the past, but something he continues to contribute to and breathe life into in every performance. Throughout Alice's career, he has had unforgettable performances, from worldwide tours to grand concerts. But now Ozzy's music, especially the iconic songs of Black Sabbath, is no longer just lyrics or melodies. It's a living legacy that Alice cherishes and protects. Each time Alice takes the stage, he doesn't just sing his own songs, but also dedicates time to sing Ozzy's hits as a tribute to his friend and the musical warrior who has passed. Alice understands that the life of Ozzy's songs doesn't just come from being honored in performances, but also from inspiring new generations of artists. And Alice is one of those who continues to do this. Alice Cooper has always believed that one of the missions of music is to inspire the next generation, especially young artists. Alice knows that Ozzy's legacy isn't just about the music released long ago, but also the spirit that people can feel when they listen to his songs. Ozzy was a warrior, and his musical legacy is a challenge to every difficulty in life. As the guardian of Ozzy's legacy, Alice not only continues it, but ensures it remains strong in the world of music. Alice and his fellow artists know that once a legend like Ozzy has passed, their job is to ensure that the flame doesn't extinguish and that Ozzy's powerful roar continues to echo through generations. The bond between Alice and Ozzy is a connection that cannot fade, even though Ozzy is gone. Alice understands that though they no longer stand together on a stage, the musical legacy Ozzy left behind will always live on through the lyrics and melodies he gave to the world. The loss of Ozzy can never be filled, but in music, Alice knows they will always be together. Music is the only thing that will never change. And that is how Alice continues to honor his dear friend. In every performance, Alice doesn't just remember the times he shared with Ozzy singing together, but each song of Ozzy that Alice sings holds gratitude and tribute to a friend, a legend who helped shape an entire generation of music. For Alice, Ozzy was not just a star that shone brightly in the sky. He was the one who lit the musical paths for those who came after. Ozzy's musical legacy will live forever in the hearts of fans, including Alice Cooper. The death of Ozzy Osbourne left a profound void, not only in Alice Cooper's heart, but in the entire music world. For Alice, this loss wasn't just the loss of a close friend, but the loss of a part of his soul in his music. Alice didn't just lose a fellow warrior, but also a part of the legacy Ozzy had built throughout his life. However, for Alice and all those who loved Ozzy, his death wasn't the end. It was just a turning point. Ozzy's music, his powerful roars, his timeless songs will continue to live on and be honored by the next generations of artists, including Alice Cooper. Ozzy's death can't dim the light he left in rock music, and it will forever live in the hearts of those who have been touched by the legend of Ozzy Osbourne.